was on a small vacation over New Year's to see my two brothers and a couple good friends of mine at my hometown. To be perfectly upfront, I never liked my hometown. Moved away as soon as I was able. It was a real small, out-of-the-way town with no cities or even neighboring towns for miles and miles. Everything was outdated and run down, and the only ones living there were people who had been there all their lives. My brothers and friends were the only reason I ever came back to visit. Usually, I'd stay at one of my brother's places for the week, but this year, both of them now had girlfriends that lived with them, so I really didn't feel like being the third wheel. The only hotel in the town was a real small family hotel right off the gravel highway. I don't think it even had a name. It was just hotel. I arrived there pretty late. The parking lot was empty except for one old truck. When I walked inside, the lobby was dim, lit by a single lamp behind the counter. An older man, 60s maybe, scruffy beard and hair grown out unevenly, stood up from a chair when he saw me. It looked like I had startled him, or that he wasn't expecting me. But after a moment, he said, "Need a room?" His voice was low and rough. He gave me a key and showed me to the room at the end of the hallway. Inside this hotel, it was very old. Not like it was falling apart, but old enough that it felt kind of dirty. The room was small too. Just a bed right in the middle with a TV in front of it. Figured it didn't matter, since I was only going to be here to sleep, and would be spending the days with my friends and family. I left everything packed and took a quick shower, then passed out on the bed. However, I woke up sometime around 3 a.m. to a soft knocking. Not at my door, at the far end of the hallway. I laid there listening to it through the thin walls. Spaced out, quiet, slow knocks. Then silence. Then a few more. It kind of sounded like an old wooden door, opening and closing, the knocks being the low thuds against the door frame. I didn't know what was going on out there, but this wasn't exactly a 5-star place, so I didn't bother caring. I fell back asleep after a while. When I got up in the morning, I went to grab coffee from the lobby before heading out, but the lobby was empty, not a coffee bar or anything. Even the front desk was empty. No sign of the old man or anyone else working there. Felt a little strange, but I shrugged it off and left to go spend the day with my brothers. I was out for a long time. I think it wasn't until 9-ish that I got back to the hotel. Once again, just that one truck was in the parking lot. When I walked in, the lobby lights were off now, and the whole place felt colder. Still no signs of the old man. I walked down the hallway and into my room, locking the door and changing into more comfortable clothes for the night. And that's when I heard it again. Those strange thud or knocking sounds. It was only a couple before it stopped and was quiet again, but this time it sounded like it was right outside of my room. I went over and cracked the door open just enough to peer into the hallway and see what was going on. Only had a second to notice the door right next to mine was slightly open now, before the man's voice called to me from down the hallway. It made me jump. He called out asking me to come down to the lobby, and before I could respond, he walked back out of view of the hallway. He didn't say why or anything. It was super weird, but I felt like I had to go down there and see what he wanted. Maybe there was a problem with my room or something. I walked down the hallway. The place was still quiet. I knew I had to be the only one staying in this hotel right now. When I got to the end, he wasn't there. The lobby was still dark, and I didn't even hear him walking around anywhere. I got a really bad feeling standing there in the lobby. I didn't like knowing that I was alone in there, even if he likely didn't have any bad intentions. After a few seconds, I decided to just hurry back to my room. I stayed up a bit later that night, but never heard any signs of the man being inside the hotel. It's like he just left after I saw him at the end of the hallway. In the morning, I went and saw my friends and mentioned the strangeness of the hotel I was staying at. All of them were confused. They seemed to all agree that they had heard something about that hotel closing down a year or two ago. None of them were sure, though, and said if I was staying there, then surely they were wrong. I spent the whole day with them, heading back late in the night. As I drove there, I couldn't help but think about the possibility that the place was actually vacant or shut down. But it just couldn't be. The lights and water in my room worked, and the old guy working there wouldn't be there to give me a room if it wasn't open. I pulled into the same site as the previous 2 nights, an empty parking lot with just the one truck. I walked inside a little more cautiously this time. Still, the lights were mostly off, and I heard nothing at all. I started walking down to my room, and when I got up to the door, I froze. It was cracked open. I creaked the door open further. The room was dark, and honestly, I was terrified to even enter. I saw my suitcase, which was still mostly packed, and decided to quickly run in and grab it. Everything else I had left in there was worth leaving, like a toothbrush and random stuff like that that I didn't care about. Definitely not enough to risk staying there any longer. I started to hurry out of there. Something in my gut told me I needed to get out of there immediately. I got down to the end of the hallway and into the dark lobby when I happened to look back at where I came from. I don't know if I'd unconsciously heard something, or if I just had a feeling to. But when I looked back, I felt my whole body go numb. I saw the old man peering out from the doorway to my room, staring down at me. I ran to my car and drove to one of my brother's places. He urged me to call the police, just to get the whole story straight. Even if it was just a worker snooping around my hotel room, it was worth reporting. But what we found was a lot worse. My friends were right. That place was vacant. Not necessarily abandoned, though. It was still connected to the power grid and everything, but the owners of the land shut it down and moved away, and sort of just left it there. And when the cops searched the place, they found no signs that the old man was there. Even that old truck that was there on all 3 days I was there was gone now. And actually, it seemed like the police didn't even believe me. Like they thought I was a crazy person that was using the abandoned hotel as a free place to stay, and just hallucinated the guy. They didn't say that outright, but I could just tell by the way they were talking to me. It made me feel even worse about that whole town. I stayed at my brother's place for the next few days, then gladly left town and headed back home. Absolutely the strangest, most confusing, and legitimately horrifying experience I've ever had. Thinking back on it is almost worse, knowing what I was in the middle of, and how close I probably was to never being seen again, had I not realized something was wrong and left in a hurry.
This holiday, Verizon is giving you incredible gifts and savings you'll enjoy all year. When you switch, you'll get 4 new iPhone 17 Pros, no trade-in needed. That's right, get 4 lines for just $25 a line and the amazing iPhone 17 Pro for everyone. Save big this holiday. Visit
I took a short vacation last Christmas to see my family over the holidays. Plan was to meet some of my family at our cabin a few hours south of the city, right in between where me and the rest of my family lived. It was just a quiet mountain cabin my parents have had for years, that we often met up at for vacations or getaways. A little wooden home with a fireplace and a view of the woods. It was always peaceful, and really, that was all I wanted. This wasn't going to be some big Christmas get-together either. My family was small, just me, my parents, and my sister. But since I was driving alone, I decided to plan for 5 days. 4 to spend with my family, and 1 that I could spend there alone. I arrived 3 days before Christmas, late in the afternoon. The sky was already darkening when I parked, and the woods behind the cabin were already covered in a haze from the sun setting. I only had a couple hours before getting to bed, so I just walked through the cabin, unpacked, and took a nice long shower, then slept through the night. I think it had been over a year since the last time any of us from the family had been to the cabin, but because I had barely been there before by myself, there was no way to know if anything was really wrong with it. I figured I'd just let my parents deal with that when they got here, though. And from a quick glance, nothing seemed to be off about the place. It was as nice and peaceful as I'd hoped. And the following day was my one and only full day to spend alone at the cabin, so I wanted to make it worthwhile. I got up early, made a hot cup of coffee, and took it with me on a walk around the woods. There was a rugged footpath from all the walks we'd taken over the years. It was maybe a 2-mile loop just through the trees and back to the cabin. That morning, it was fairly cold outside, and there was a thin layer of snow on the ground that had fallen overnight. The woods were very quiet. Really, all I heard was wind flowing through the trees. But I only made it half a mile in before seeing some strange scuffs in the snow right on the trail. Thought it might have been a deer or other animal, but further down, there were more clear prints, showing they were shoe prints. Very distinct, too, like they'd been made not long ago. I looked around. Nobody should have been out in these woods, especially this close onto our property. The prints seemed to follow the trail for a while, and as I continued along it, I just started getting uneasy about it, and decided to turn back. I was sure it was nothing, just a hunter walking around, or maybe someone else had a cabin near there, but I wanted to be safe and just head back. I definitely didn't want to run into anyone out there in the middle of nowhere. That was pretty much all that was on my mind the whole walk back, trying to figure out why someone was out there. Finally seeing the cabin, I walked up to the front door and almost choked on my coffee. There were shoe prints going right up to the door. It came from the other way, where the trail ended and came back around. Obviously, they weren't there before, so that means whoever was out here had been right outside the cabin just minutes ago. I frantically looked around, feeling like someone was watching me. But all I saw was an empty, snowy forest all around me. After a few seconds, the tension got too much for me to handle, and I quickly got inside and locked the door. My heart was racing. The chances of this happening was nearly zero, and on the one day that I was here alone, was even less likely. It felt like this couldn't possibly be a coincidence. And the thing is, when I left the cabin to go for a short walk, I didn't lock it. Because why the hell would I need to, for just going on a quick walk on my own property out in the middle of an isolated forest? I felt extremely uncomfortable, but I really hoped I was just overreacting. Like whoever that was just saw the trail led to a cabin, and checked through the windows if it was abandoned or something, then just left when they saw I wasn't. It was still creepy as hell, though. I called my parents to let them know about what was going on, just in case. They said that maybe I should spend the night at a hotel and wait for them to get there tomorrow, just so I wasn't alone. My mom also seemed more nervous about it than I was, which is saying a lot. But I decided to stay. I was still going to be cautious, not opening the doors anymore and just staying inside for the rest of the day. Pretty bad decision looking back on it. The day dragged on. I wanted this to be a peaceful, relaxing day alone, but knowing that I might not be alone out there made it the complete opposite of relaxing. I was more paranoid than anything. I sat in the living room by the fireplace for most of the day, drinking coffee to keep me awake. Even though I was tired, I didn't want to sleep. Closing my eyes didn't feel safe, like something could happen if I didn't stay alert. Slowly, the day started coming to an end and the sun started getting lower, and eventually it was dark out again. An eerie calmness fell over the woods around the cabin. It was just the crackling fireplace lighting up the small room I was in. Even after all those hours, I was still thinking about those footprints coming up to the cabin. And as I got more and more tired, knowing I needed to sleep at some point, I was desperate for a way to somehow know if I was safe, like a sign that they were really gone. And somehow it wasn't until that moment that I thought about checking to see where the footprints led after reaching the cabin, like if they turned around and went back toward the trail, or just off into the woods, which would have been incredibly creepy. I got up and creaked open the front door. It was pitch black and silent outside. The woods out front were too ominous to look at without getting chills. I looked down at the still frozen shoe prints in the snow. Even just seeing them again gave me a really bad gut feeling. I looked for the shoe prints leading away, and kept looking, and slowly I could feel my face getting pale as I couldn't find any shoe prints leading away from the cabin. They went right up to the door, then just disappeared at the doorway. And that's when it hit me. Me leaving the cabin unlocked, and the footprints not leaving. I slowly turned around, looking into the dark, flickering orange glow inside the cabin from the fireplace. Someone was in here with me. Someone had been in there with me all day. Almost right on cue, I heard a slight creak down the hall. I leaned my body forward, enough to look down the hall toward the bedrooms. My bedroom door was open, and a man was in the middle of the hall, slowly creeping toward the living room I was in. As soon as he saw me, he froze for a moment, before bolting down the hallway at me. I took my keys off the wall and sprinted to my car, getting in and leaving immediately. By the time I felt far enough to look in the mirror, the cabin wasn't even lit up by my back headlights anymore. It was just a void of black behind me. I got into the nearest town and had police take my report and check out the cabin. Of course, the man wasn't there when the officers looked. They did find some scuffs on the floor in the bedroom, though, inside the small stand-in closet. So they think he was hiding in there all day, waiting for me to go to bed and fall asleep. But what really makes it that much creepier is that's all we know. No idea who he was or what he wanted to do to me. I mean, what if it was someone I knew, that knew I'd be going to that cabin alone for a day? The coincidence of it all seems like a lot, but I really hope that's all it is, and that I'll never have to encounter that man again. I was somewhere in northern Oregon when it happened. I don't remember the exact highway. It wasn't one of the main ones, just one of those empty back roads surrounded by miles of dense forest. I'd been driving for hours, with the music low and the windows cracked to keep myself awake. This was supposed to be a pretty standard road trip, I guess. Just seeing a few places, driving around, and clearing my head from all the noise. Nothing too exciting. I'd been paying relatively close attention to my gas gauge, checking every so often, and trying to fill it up when it was around a fourth of a tank. But I guess this time I pushed it too far. When the warning light came on, I figured I still had plenty of miles left to make it to the next gas station. I even checked my phone for the next station and put my directions on it. and it said 45 minutes away. Not ideal, but I thought I would still be fine. Definitely was slightly nervous though, seeing as there were no other closer options, even if I were to do a U-turn. Anyway, I kept driving, glancing down at my phone a while later and seeing it was at 35 minutes. Then I checked again maybe a few minutes later, seeing it still said 35 minutes. I remember staring at that number, wondering if it was even accurate anymore. Surely it was just an error or something. I checked another couple minutes later, and that's when I fully realized that the GPS wasn't updating at all. It was stuck at the 35-minute mark, and the little car icon wasn't moving either. I started messing with my phone, trying to reset the directions and clicking every button. But before I could get it working, my car sputtered. I felt my stomach drop. I hoped it was just a quick one-time thing from being low on fuel and not empty. Only got 30 seconds further before it sputtered again, and then again, and completely cut out. Wouldn't turn back on even in the slightest. I coasted to the shoulder of the road and sat there in silence for a minute, unable to believe the situation I knew I was in. I looked around at the place I'd ended up basically trapped at. The forest on either side of me was dark and lifeless. No lights at all, and a dense fog covering the top of the trees. It gave me chills as I sat there looking at it. I felt eerily alone. I grabbed my phone and tried to call for help, but it took me about 10 seconds to see why my GPS had gotten stuck, and now why my calls wouldn't go through. I had no service, like zero service whatsoever. I put my head in my hands for a second, realizing how screwed I was, then got out of my car. I figured if my phone GPS had been frozen at 35 minutes for a while, I could have been just 10 to 15 minutes from the gas station. I mean, I had no way to know how long it was frozen for. If I was lucky, I could walk to the gas station and make it in half an hour or something. What other choice did I have anyway? I grabbed a small flashlight from the glove compartment, then manually locked the car with my key, and started walking down the road. It was empty and quiet, but not in the peaceful way. In the I can barely see anything through the fog and pitch darkness kind of way. The forest on either side of me was so unnervingly quiet and dark. Every time I glanced over, my eyes would be looking all around at the shadows that filled the areas between the trees, making every small thing look like something I knew it wasn't. It was just my imagination filling in the darkness with shapes that weren't there. So I tried to not even look. I kept my eyes forward, looking at the endless road ahead. My flashlight was nice to have, but it barely made it 10 feet in front of me with all the fog on the road. But about 5 minutes in, I heard something. It was a few cracks of branches, definitely not wind or just trees swaying. It was something snapping a couple of branches, either by stepping on them or I don't know. I stopped walking. The forest went dead silent. I pointed my flashlight out there and stared into the darkness. The longer I looked though, the more uneasy I got, seeing those shapes again and knowing something could be out there looking back at me. Like if I continued to stare for too long, something would happen. So I looked away and kept walking, a little more rushed though, at least to get away from that area. A few minutes later, I noticed something on the right side of the road up ahead. At first, all I could see was a large shape laying near the trees. Thought it might have just been a fallen tree or something. But as I got closer and could get my flashlight to light it up a bit, I realized it was a car. An old beat-up sedan, halfway lodged into the forest, way past the shoulder of the road. But strangely, it didn't really look like it had crashed there. Looked more like whoever it was had driven it slowly down to the edge of the tree line, and then just left it there. The driver's side door was open slightly, and the car looked like it'd been there for a while, weeks or months even. And it was far enough off the road that unless you were walking along the secluded stretch like I was, then there was no way any cars passing by would notice it. Seeing that car lit up in my flashlight made me really disturbed. The thought that someone else had been here, maybe also run out of gas, or broken down or whatever. And whatever happened afterward clearly wasn't good if the car was still abandoned here. I didn't call out or shine my flashlight into the trees. I don't know why, but again, I had this overwhelming feeling that if I looked for too long, something terrible would happen. And just when I thought that and realized I needed to keep moving, there was another sound from the woods. A rustle in the bushes near one of the trees behind the car, and then another. I turned instinctively toward the noise, and for a moment I thought my mind was playing tricks on me again. But no, I saw something. Not clearly, not faces or details, just figures moving between the trees. More than one, a group of people running through the forest just outside of view. My whole body went cold. I started speed walking down the road, not running. I almost had this instinctual thought that I didn't want to look like prey and show I was panicked by sprinting, but I walked faster than normal. I tried to act like I didn't hear the footsteps that started to match my pace in the forest. Multiple sets, crunching through the forest, following me along the tree line. I was genuinely too afraid to shine my light over there, or even look, scared of what I'd see. And somehow, through all of that going on, I never even heard or noticed a truck driving up behind me. Wasn't until the pickup truck stopped right next to me and a man yelled through the roll-down window that I got startled and realized he was even there. It was some regular-looking, dusty pickup truck, and the man looked maybe 50, with gray in his beard. He looked tired, but not necessarily threatening. "You stranded. What are you doing walking around out here? You're a long way from anything." I was so shaken, I just answered truthfully, saying my car ran out of gas and that I hoped I could walk to the nearest gas station. The man almost let out a short smirk, like I was crazy. "Hop in. I'll take you to the station. Think you're a lot further than you think you are." During this whole conversation, every sound and movement in the forest had stopped, and it was dead silent again. It was like everything paused for those 30 seconds. I hesitated, but decided to get in. Hitchhiking out there in the middle of nowhere was not something I ever thought I'd do, but the alternative of staying alone out there on the side of the road with whatever the hell was going on seemed worse to me. Felt like it was a risk either way. But it paid off. The old man really was just trying to help, and he seemed just as cautious as I was about the whole hitchhiking thing. He said he never offered rides, but that he lived on a farm an hour north and takes this road a lot, and had never seen someone like me wandering at night like that, and knew something could be really wrong. I didn't mention what I'd seen or heard out in the forest, not wanting to sound like an insane person. The drive to the gas station took way longer than I thought, nearly 25 minutes. Would have taken me hours to walk there, if I even made it past that forest. And when we got to the gas station, the man gave me a pat on the shoulder and wished me luck. That was it. No weirdness, no strange comments, just a guy helping someone out. I headed in and bought a gas tank, then took the clerk's advice to call the police to help me out, now that I had service. He said the sheriff's office around here was kind, and would give me a lift back to my car and make sure everything was okay. Thank God I did, because getting dropped back off at my car at night alone would have been awful. And when the cop drove me there, we found my car, except it had been moved. It was off the shoulder and on the edge of the forest, almost exactly like the other car I'd found out there. Someone, or that group, had pushed my car down there, like they didn't want anyone else to see it. That's when I told the officer everything. Anyway, that whole night became a mess. But to sum it up, the police wrote a report and did a bit of searching, but nothing came of it. No suspects, no nearby houses, and no one else had seen or heard anything. Even the other car they found had no plates on it or identifying information. There's really no saying what those people out in the forest were there for, or what they would have done if that pickup truck hadn't shown up exactly when it did.
My name is Kelsey, and this happened to me in Waukesha, Wisconsin in December of 2020. Even when I'm done working, I'm still organizing things. Numbers, routines, little checklists that make life feel controlled. December is always the worst. Year-end deadlines, holiday pressure, and that constant sense that something important is about to be missed. That night was supposed to be quiet. I remember checking the thermostat, 70. Good. I put the kettle on, made tea, and did my usual walk through the house. Front door locked, back door locked, porch light on. Outside, the street looked calm. Snow was coming down steadily, softening everything. A few houses had Christmas lights on. Across the street, I could see a TV glowing behind someone's curtains.
This new year, shop kitchen essentials at Hobby Lobby. Make your space inviting. Make it neat and unique. Make it fun and functional.
Everyone was home. You can feel it when a neighborhood settles in for the night. I opened my laptop and told myself I'd finish one small thing. The TV played quietly in the background, some forgettable holiday movie I wasn't really watching. Then the power went out. No warning, no flicker. The TV went black, the lamp died, and the refrigerator stopped. What followed was silence. Real silence. The kind you only notice when it shouldn't exist. I stood there for a second, waiting for the rest of the street to go dark. It didn't. I walked to the front window and looked out. Streetlights were still on. Porch lights glowed up and down the block. Across the street, someone's TV was still flickering blue. My house was the only one dark. I laughed, like my brain was trying to keep things normal. Breaker. That had to be it. I went down to the basement with my phone flashlight. The breaker panel looked fine. Nothing tripped. I flipped them anyway, one by one, careful and methodical. Nothing happened. Upstairs, every outlet was dead. The thermostat screen was blank. I called the utility company, already knowing the answer. There are currently no reported outages in your area. I hung up and stood in the hallway, listening to the wind push snow against the house. Then I heard a soft crunch outside. It stood out because everything else was quiet. Then another. I walked back toward the living room window. When I looked out, I didn't see anything at first. Just snow blowing sideways in the streetlight. Then I noticed the shape. A person was standing in my yard, not close to the sidewalk. Like they meant it that way. They were half lit by my neighbor's floodlight, arms at their sides, not moving. They weren't walking. They weren't looking around. They were just there. My brain scrambled for explanations. Neighbor, someone checking on houses, maybe even someone lost. But no one stands motionless in a snowstorm, deep in someone else's yard. I stepped back and locked the deadbolt again, even though it was already locked. The sound of the lock felt small. I checked the window again from behind the curtain. The person hadn't moved. What scared me wasn't that they didn't come closer. It was that they stayed where I could see them if I checked. Like they wanted me to keep checking. I moved to the kitchen, keeping the phone light low. From that angle, I couldn't see the yard clearly. The side of the house was darker. I took a step toward the side door. Then I heard a tap. On the side window. Light. Fingertip light. I backed away fast, nearly bumping into the counter. Another tap. Then nothing. It felt like a reminder. I called 911. I tried to explain calmly. Power out only in my house. Someone in the yard. Tapping on a window. Saying it out loud made it sound unreal, but I didn't stop. The dispatcher kept me talking while officers were on the way. When they arrived, the yard was empty. They walked the perimeter with flashlights, no footprints they could clearly identify, no damage, everything still locked. They asked if I had cameras. I did. A porch camera I'd installed earlier that year. I opened the app on my phone, offline. One officer shrugged it off, said cameras lose connection sometimes. They suggested staying with someone overnight. I said I would. I didn't. I sat in my dark living room wearing a coat, waiting for the neighborhood to change, waiting for another house to lose power, for something to confirm this was normal. An hour later, the power came back on, all at once. Lights, heat, fridge, like nothing had happened. The next day, I called the utility company again. They said the same thing, no outage recorded. An electrician came later that week. He checked everything, panel, meter, lines. He couldn't find a problem. Sometimes strange stuff happens, he said. That answer stuck with me, because it didn't feel like the power went out. It felt like my house had been turned off. Like someone wanted me blind inside my own walls while they stood just far enough away to be seen. Now, when I see one dark house on an otherwise lit street, I don't think breaker. I think someone wanted it that way. My name is Tessa, and this happened in January of 2023 in Plano, Texas. It was just a normal weeknight, the kind you don't even remember later. I'd come home from work, reheated leftover pasta, and spread a few case files across my kitchen table. I told myself I'd skim them for an hour before bed, just to feel productive. I'm a paralegal. My job is built on details. I'm also careful by nature. Not paranoid, just the kind of person who checks locks without thinking about it. I remember locking all the house's doors automatically while my food was heating up. Outside, a cold front had moved in. Texas cold doesn't feel cozy. It's sharp wind that rattles fences and makes houses creak. My place always made noise during weather like that. The attic popped. The vents clicked. I'd lived there long enough to know which sounds meant nothing. That's why the noise I heard around 9:30 made me stop mid-bite. It wasn't a creak. It was a soft contact sound, something touching the hallway floor, then stopping. I sat still, listening. The TV murmured in the background. The dryer thumped from the laundry room. Wind pushed against the windows. I almost convinced myself it was nothing. Then I heard it again. A quiet bump, like someone brushed the wall while walking. Too controlled to be the house settling, too specific to ignore. I stared toward the hallway, with the fork still in my hand. I live alone, no pets, no roommates, no reason for movement beyond me. I stood up and walked to my bedroom, not fast, not slow, like I was following a procedure. I closed the door and locked it. I stood there with my hand on the knob and listened. The house felt hollow now, like all the noise had drained out of it. I pulled out my phone and texted my friend, Mia. Probably nothing, but I swear I just heard something in my hallway. I didn't joke. I didn't soften it. I wanted a timestamp more than reassurance. She replied immediately. Are you alone? Call someone. I'm fine. Wind's crazy. House noises. I answered. I didn't believe that as I typed it. I was writing the version of events I hoped would be true. Then the bedroom door handle moved, like someone testing how much resistance there was. Then it stopped. I didn't step back, I didn't speak. My body just refused to make sound. A few seconds passed, or maybe longer. Time stopped behaving normally. Then the handle moved again. Not someone forcing it, someone patient. I backed away and opened my phone. I typed 911, but I didn't hit call yet. That hesitation makes me angry now, but in the moment, my brain was doing what it's trained to do. Evaluate. What if it's nothing? What if the police come and there's no proof? What if I'm wrong? I stood there, negotiating with reality. The handle turned a third time, and this time I heard something else. Metal brushing metal, like keys, or a ring, or something hard touching the knob carefully. That's when I pressed call. The dispatcher answered. I gave my address, told her I was locked in my bedroom, told her someone was trying to get in. She asked questions while I stared at the door. The handle didn't move again, but the silence felt active now. Heavy, like whoever was on the other side was listening too. She asked if I could see them. I said no. She asked if I was armed. I said no. She told me officers were on the way. Then I heard another sound in the hallway. That same soft contact noise, but closer this time, near my door. Then nothing. The knock at the front door cut through everything. Plano police. The dispatcher told me to stay where I was until they announced themselves inside. When I finally opened my bedroom door, the hallway was empty. The officers checked everything. Doors, windows, closets, the garage. No signs of forced entry, one of them said. That phrase bothered me more than I expected. No forced entry meant no story. No proof. Just me and what I felt. They listened while I explained the handle, the scrape, the timing. One officer says politely, "Old houses make sounds. Pressure changes." I didn't argue. They left after advising me to call again if anything happened. After telling me I was probably okay, I locked everything again and slept with the TV on. I barely slept at all. In the morning, daylight made the house look harmless. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then I noticed the front door lock. Tiny, fresh scuffs near the keyhole. Bright against the dull metal. Too precise to be wear and tear. Like someone had tried a key. More than once. I stood there staring at those marks, and something clicked into place. Someone had tested the front door earlier, and maybe that was the entryway. Now I don't wait for certainty anymore. I don't write off house noises. I don't sleep without my phone in reach. I don't hesitate when something feels wrong. Because the worst moments don't come with answers. They come with a quiet hand on a doorknob, and the realization that someone already knows how your house works.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than just Peyton Manning.
It was one of those early summer nights where the air finally softens. The windows were open, the ceiling fan was on low, and the house had that quiet you only notice when you're alone. Dishwasher humming, TV murmuring to itself, a lawnmower somewhere that wouldn't quit. My husband had taken the kids to his sister's for the evening. I stayed home to finish work. End of quarter reviews, follow-up emails, a messy employee complaint that needed documentation. HR never really shuts off. I made tea, put on something mindless, and told myself I'd work for an hour and then relax. Our dog, Milo, was stretched out on the rug like he'd melted there. He's a shepherd mix, calm and observant. Not a barker. The kind of dog who reads the room before deciding how to behave. That's why it stood out when he got up. He didn't jump or rush. He just rose to his feet slowly, walked to the edge of the living room, and stopped where the space opens into the hallway leading to the bedrooms and back door. And he stared. At first, I barely registered it. I was halfway through an email, rereading the same sentence. I looked up and saw Milo standing still, head slightly lowered, eyes fixed down the hall. "Milo," I called. "What is it?" He didn't blink. I smiled, assuming it was nothing. A muff, a sound outside. It was June. Everything makes noise in June. Don't start, I said. We're not doing ghost stories. That was the first joke. Then he made a sound I'd never heard inside the house. Not a bark, not a snarl. A low, restrained growl that lasted a second, stopped, then started again. Like a warning, he wasn't sure he needed to repeat. He wasn't looking around. He wasn't confused. He was focused. I muted the TV and set my laptop aside. Milo, I said again, come here. He didn't move. That's when I stood up. He listens. Maybe not perfectly, but enough that he at least acknowledges me. This time, nothing. I walked toward the hallway entrance and leaned around the corner. The hall wasn't dark. The kitchen light spilled in from the other side. A nightlight glowed near the kids' room. Nothing there. I checked the bedrooms. Empty. Beds made, closet doors closed. Everything normal. When I came back, Milo was still at the hallway entrance, body angled like he was stopping me from moving forward. I turned on the hallway light. Everything was normal. Beige walls, family photos, a basket of laundry I hadn't folded. I told myself it was just a dog reacting to sound. But when I crouched beside him and said his name, he looked at me for half a second, just enough to acknowledge I existed, then snapped his attention back down the hall. That's when I noticed his posture. He wasn't leaning forward. He was braced. Like if something came out of that hallway, he intended to meet it. I turned on more lights. Living room, kitchen, the small stove light that makes everything feel exposed. Then I heard something from the back of the house. A soft shift, like a door settling. A click that didn't belong with wind or pipes. The back door sat off the kitchen through a small laundry area. Milo stayed planted at the hallway entrance, eyes locked forward, like he was guarding a boundary. I walked to the back door and checked the lock. Unlocked. I stared at it, waiting for the obvious explanation to arrive. Maybe my husband forgot. Maybe the kids unlocked it earlier. Except the kids hadn't been home since afternoon. And my husband locks doors without thinking. So do I know I locked it. Not pretty sure. I know. I slid the lock back into place and tested the handle. Then I checked the deadbolt, also unlocked. One lock being wrong is a mistake. Two is a decision. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the door like it might explain itself. Behind me, Milo growled again. I turned and saw him now fully blocking the hallway, body angled between me and the dark stretch behind him. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching. I grabbed my phone and called my husband. He answered immediately. Kids laughing in the background. Hey, he said. Everything okay? No, I said. Can you come home? What happened? The back door was unlocked. Both locks. Milo's acting not normal. Pause. Then, are you alone? Yes. Call the police. That word felt extreme, which told me it was necessary. I dialed and gave the dispatcher my address, my voice calm in a way that surprised me. I said I was alone. I said my dog was growling at the hallway. I said the back door had been unlocked. She asked if I could see anyone. No, I said, but I don't think I should check. She told me to move to a locked room if possible. That's when I realized Milo was between me and the bedrooms. He'd positioned himself there like he understood the layout better than I did. I backed into the living room without turning my back on the hall. Milo adjusted with me, maintaining his position like a living barrier. We waited. Time stretched oddly, like it might tear if I pushed it. When the police arrived, flashlights cut across the windows, and Milo's posture eased just slightly. He recognized something normal happening. They searched the yard, the porch, the fence line. No signs of forced entry, no disturbed mulch, no footprints. They asked questions. When was the last time you used the back door? Anything missing? Any reason someone would target you? After they left, I walked the house with every light on. Checked closets, bathrooms, under beds. Nothing missing. Nothing disturbed. That bothered me more than if something had been taken. Because if someone had been inside, they weren't there to steal. They were there to move through the space, to unlock the door, to leave quietly, to prove they could. My family came home. We double-checked everything together. My husband tried to make it normal again. He joked, he fed Milo treats. But Milo wouldn't go down that hallway. Not that night. Not the next week. Not even later, when everything was calm. If a ball rolled toward the hallway, he stopped at the threshold like there was an invisible line. Sometimes, late at night, I catch Milo staring toward that hallway again. And I don't joke anymore, because once you've seen a dog refuse to look away from an empty space, you stop trusting the word empty. My name is Tyler, and this happened in Redmond, Washington in February of 2015. I was 16 at the time, and I know that matters, because stories like this tend to get dismissed once people hear your age. They assume imagination, nerves, too much internet. That night wasn't like that. It was a normal Friday. My parents were out to dinner with friends, nothing unusual. They left around 7 and told me they'd be back before midnight. I remember joking about having the house to myself and asking them to bring fries back if they stopped somewhere. Our house was a single-story place, no second floor, just bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and an attic above everything. The attic access was a square panel in the hallway ceiling with a pull-down ladder. My dad stored boxes up there, Christmas stuff, old cables, random junk. I'd been up there maybe twice. That night, I was in the living room gaming with my headset on. I had YouTube playing on my phone during load times and a half-empty bag of chips on the coffee table. Outside, it had rained earlier and everything looked shiny under the streetlights. I remember thinking it felt good, being trusted, being alone, not worrying about anything. Then I heard running. It wasn't outside. It wasn't in the walls. It was above me. My brain tried to explain it away immediately. Houses make noises. Pipes shift. Wood expands. I'd heard all of that before. This wasn't that. It sounded like quick footsteps crossing the ceiling, fast enough that whatever it was moved from one side of the house to the other. Something like bare feet, but there isn't a normal floor up there. Just beams and insulation. I paused the game, slid one ear cup off, and sat still, listening. Nothing. My first thought was raccoons. Everyone in Washington talks about raccoons like they're roommates. We had trees nearby. It was believable enough to settle me for about 10 seconds. Then it happened again. This time, it sounded closer, like the movement changed direction. I stood up and walked to the kitchen like I needed a drink, opened the fridge, let the light fill the room. Everything felt normal down there. Heater ticking, fridge humming. Then I heard a short, solid thump from above the hallway. I walked to the hallway slowly and stopped where I could see the attic panel. It looked normal. Closed, ladder folded inside, nothing out of place. I told myself I was being dramatic, that I was 16 and alone and overthinking things. So I called my dad. He answered quickly. "What's up?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Do we ever get animals in the attic?" There was a pause. "Why? I keep hearing running above me."
Creativity is not something I wait for. I am Antoni Sendra, a filmmaker. I'm always hunting and hustling for ideas. Adobe Creative Cloud is designed.
Another pause. Longer. "Is the ladder down?" he asked. "No. Don't open it," he said immediately. That tone changed everything. "What should I do?" I asked. "Go outside," he said. "Get in the car or go to the neighbors. I'm leaving now." I didn't argue. I grabbed my hoodie and keys. I was halfway to the front door when I heard movement again, this time right above the hallway, short steps. I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. Then the attic ladder dropped. It slammed open like it had been pulled and released. The panel popped and the ladder unfolded with a loud clatter that echoed through the house. I stared at the opening, just a dark square. No light, no movement. Cold air drifted down, carrying that dusty, dry smell of insulation. My dad was still on the phone. "The ladder came down," I said. "Get out now," he said. I ran. Out the front door, hit the porch light, fumbled with my keys. I got into my mom's car because it was closest and locked the doors. Then locked them again. From the driveway, I could see straight into the living room. The hallway beyond it. The ladder hanging there, open, like it was waiting. I called my friend Mason. "Bro, my attic ladder just dropped," I said. Silence. "Are you serious?" "I'm in the car. My dad's on the way." I sat there under the porch light watching my house. It looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. When my parents finally pulled up, I felt something in my chest loosen. My dad went inside first. My mom stayed close behind him. They didn't walk under the ladder. My dad grabbed the big flashlight and looked up into the opening. "Stay behind me," he said. He climbed slowly, one rung at a time. The flashlight beam swept across rafters and insulation. He came back down without saying anything, then went back up again. My mom called the non-emergency police line. When my dad came down the second time, his face looked tight. "There's insulation compressed," he said, like weight was there. The police came. 2 officers. They checked the attic, walked the yard, looked for signs of entry. They didn't find anyone. One officer suggested the panel might have been loose. After that night, my parents screwed the attic access shut, installed cameras, added motion lights. On paper, everything was safer, but what stayed with me wasn't seeing someone. It was hearing them, hearing someone moving while I sat downstairs acting like I was alone. I lived in that house for 2 more years, and I never sat under a quiet ceiling the same way again. This happened when I was 17. I still hesitate before telling it because nothing happened in the way people expect. It was a Wednesday night. My mom was out late at a church meeting, one of those things that always ran longer than planned. She left around 6 and told me she'd be home by 10. I remember because I asked if I could order food, and she said yes, but not too late. The house felt normal, comfortable. I'd grown up there, so I knew its sounds. The air vents clicking on, the faint tick of the hallway clock, the way the floor made a soft noise near the stairs. None of it bothered me. I did homework at the kitchen table, then took a shower, then curled up in my room with Netflix and my laptop balanced on my knees. I was halfway watching, halfway scrolling, not really focused on anything. That's when I heard my mom say my name. "Emily." It came from the hallway. The same tone she used when she wanted me to come out and help with something. The "come here for a second" voice. I answered automatically. "Yeah?" I waited for a response. None came. That's when I remembered she wasn't home. I sat up in bed. I listened carefully, trying to catch any other sound that might explain it. The TV in my room played softly. The house stayed quiet. I thought it was my brain filling in gaps. Sometimes you think you hear things when you're tired. I even smiled a little, embarrassed at myself. Then it happened again. "Emily." Same voice, same tone. This time, my stomach tightened for real. I picked up my phone and texted my mom. "Did you come home early? I just heard you call me." The message showed as delivered. I stood up and locked my bedroom door. I don't remember deciding to do it. My hand just reached for the lock and I turned it quietly. Then I pressed my ear against the door. The hallway smelled faintly like laundry detergent and whatever cleaner we used on the floors. Nothing felt out of place. I didn't want to step into the hall, not because I thought something would jump out, but because stepping out felt like answering. That was the worst part. There were no footsteps, no sound of movement, no explanation. I backed away from the door and sat on my bed, pulling my knees up. I tried calling my mom. It rang, went to voicemail. I whispered into the phone even though I was alone. "Mom, please answer." I checked the front door through my bedroom window that faced the driveway. Her car wasn't there. I checked the time, 9:42 p.m. The hallway stayed quiet for maybe a minute, long enough for my brain to start arguing with itself again. Then, "Emily, come here." That time, it didn't just say my name, it asked. I started crying without meaning to. Silent tears, pressing my sleeve to my mouth so I wouldn't make a sound. I didn't want whatever it was to know I was scared. I called my best friend, Sarah, and put the phone on speaker, setting it face down on the bed. She answered groggy. "Hey? I think someone's in my house," I whispered. "What? Emily, are you serious?" I heard my mom's voice. "She's not home. Stay where you are. Don't go out there," as if I would. While she was talking, trying to calm me down, I heard a sound at my door. Just the lightest contact, like someone resting their fingertips against the wood. Just a reminder. I clamped my hand over my mouth and shook my head, even though no one could see me. Sarah heard my breathing change. "What's happening?" "It's at my door," I whispered. My mom got home 15 minutes later. I was sitting on the floor of my room with my back against the bed, phone still in my hand, door still locked. She found me shaking and crying, and at first, she thought something terrible had happened to me. I tried to explain, stumbling over the words, repeating the same details like they might change. She checked the house, every room, closets, doors, windows, nothing. No sign anyone had been there. That night, she slept in my room. In the days after, she suggested stress, anxiety, mishearing things. I nodded because I didn't know how to explain. The problem was that the voice sounded like it expected me to come when called, like it knew that for my entire life, that voice had meant safety, authority, obedience. It didn't need to sound threatening, it just needed to sound like my mom. And that's the part I still think about, years later, how close I came to answering it the first time before I remembered I was alone. If these stories reminded you that silence inside a house can be louder than screams, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next scare, and tell me which story stuck with you. And if grocery shopping feels boring or harmless, you haven't watched this channel enough. Click now to watch 4 creepy supermarket horror stories. Trust me, after that video, you'll never browse an empty aisle the same way again. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.
We like to believe we live in a world where everything is normal. Horror movies are just movies. Urban legends are just legends. But there seems to be something underground in the wilds of California that might have you rethinking the way you see the world altogether. This story titled The Things in the Ground, from a user by the name of Riveting33, shows us that true horror is real, and it's simply waiting deep under your feet, waiting for the right moment. I've been listening to your podcast for a few years now. I started during the lockdowns when I was working from home and needed something to fill the quiet. I burned through your whole back catalog in maybe 3 months, then started over from the beginning. I'm not sure what that says about me, but I heard your Alaskan tree god episode last week. Good stuff, by the way, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Not that I thought it was a lie or crazy, but the opposite. I believed every word of it, and that's what's been keeping me up. You see, I saw something too, back in 2012 when I was 17. Me and 4 friends out in the desert in Southern California. We were doing things we weren't supposed to be doing in places we weren't supposed to be. And something came up out of the ground and tried to kill us. Now, whatever it was, it definitely wasn't like the Alaskan tree god thing, but it was the same level of wrongness. That feeling of looking at something that should not exist. So I figured maybe it was time to write this down, because who knows, maybe someone else will find this familiar and write their own story, and maybe we aren't the only ones who have encountered it. The name's Corey. I'm 28 now. I work as an electrician, but when I was 17, I saw something that I still can't explain. Here is what happened. During the summer of 2012, I was between junior and senior years, and I was absolutely convinced I would live forever. My best friend since 6th grade was a kid named Tyler Reese, and together we discovered the greatest hobby in the world: illegal night riding. I should explain what that means. Tyler's family had money. Technically not rich, but very comfortable. And for his 16th birthday, they bought him a Yamaha dirt bike. A beautiful machine, way nicer than anything I could afford. I had a beat-up Honda that I'd bought with 2 summers of lawn mowing money. And our friends Danny and Owen had these old ATVs they'd picked up secondhand. Clunkers, but they ran. The legal places to ride were boring. Designated trails with really low speed limits. Park rangers that would hassle you for everything you did. So we started to explore. Tyler would spend hours on Google Earth looking for spots, like dry lake beds or abandoned quarries, some stretches of BLM land where nobody ever went. We'd load up his truck after dark, drive out to wherever he'd found, and ride until 2 or 3 in the morning. Was it illegal? Mostly, yeah. Trespassing, riding without permits, noise violations, probably a dozen other things we didn't even know about. Did we care? Not even a little. We were 17. We were invincible. And there's nothing like flying across the desert at night with the stars stretched out above you, your headlight cutting through the black in front of you, and the cold air hitting your face. It's the closest thing to freedom I've ever felt. There were 5 of us that night. Me and Tyler on our dirt bikes, Danny and Owen on the ATVs, and Tyler's girlfriend, Keely, who'd ride on the back of Tyler's bike, and somehow never complained about the dust or the cold or the hours of sitting on an uncomfortable seat. She was impressive. Keely really was something else. Most girls I knew back then would have wanted nothing to do with our stupid desert adventures. But Keely was different. She was practical and tough and didn't scare easy. She'd grown up on a ranch outside of Barstow and had probably seen more harsh country by the time she was 12 than most people do in their whole lives. Tyler was lucky to have her. We all knew it, including him. Danny was the type of guy who could not shut up if his life depended on it. The guy just couldn't help himself. It was just how he processed his thoughts. Out loud. Owen was an anxiety-ridden guy, always waiting for the worst things to happen. We gave him a hard time about it, the way friends do, but he was solid still, reliable. When things got serious, Owen was the guy you wanted watching your back, even if his confidence was lacking. Then there was me. I'm not sure how to describe myself. I was just a normal kid, I guess, nothing special. I liked riding and I liked my friends. and I loved the way the desert felt at night. That's about all I can say about me. The night I'm talking about was a Friday in late July. It was hot as heck during the day. Maybe 115, even 120 in the sun, but once the sun went down, it cooled off fast. By 9 o'clock, it was almost pleasant. By midnight, it'd be downright cold. That's the desert for you. Tyler had found a new spot, a dry lake bed about 40 minutes outside of town, surrounded by these low, rocky hills. He'd seen it on these satellite images and got all excited. It was flat, open, no obstacles, no trails, no one around for miles. Perfect. We loaded up around 8. 2 dirt bikes in the bed of Tyler's truck, the ATVs on a trailer behind, a cooler full of water and energy drinks, and of course, helmets, goggles, gloves. We had done this enough times we had the routine down. The drive out was the usual mix of music and bullcrap. Danny had the aux cord and kept playing this terrible dubstep that nobody but him liked. Owen was quiet in the back seat, staring out the window. Keely was up front with Tyler, her feet on the dashboard, giving him directions even though he already knew where he was going. I remember feeling good, happy, being young, having friends, doing something you love. I didn't know it at the time, but that was probably the last night I would ever feel that way. Completely carefree, unaware that the world had things in it that could change you. We got to the lake bed around 9:30. We unloaded the bikes, the ATVs, and we geared up. The sun had been down for about an hour, and the sky was that deep purple color it gets before full dark. The stars were just starting to come out, and they looked great out here. "All right," Tyler said, pulling on his gloves. "Same rules as always. Stay in sight of each other. If you break down, kill your engine and wait, someone will come back for you. And if you see headlights that aren't ours, scatter and meet back at the truck." "Yes, Mom," Danny said. "I'm serious. I don't want to have to explain to someone's parents why their kid got arrested for trespassing on federal land." "Has that ever actually happened?" Keely asked. "No, and I want to keep it that way." We started riding. God, it was beautiful out there. The lake bed was perfectly flat, better than we had hoped, full of hard-packed dirt that was almost like pavement. You could open up the throttle and just go. Nothing in your way, nothing to worry about. The hills rose up around us like the walls of an arena, black shapes against stars. The only sounds were our engines and the wind. We raced each other across the lake bed, pulling stupid stunts, seeing who could get the most air off the little ridges and bumps. Danny almost wiped out, trying to do a donut, and ended up spinning in circles for about 30 seconds while we laughed at him. Owen, despite being the nervous one, turned out to be the best at wheelies. He could hold one for 100 yards without breaking a sweat. At around 10:30, I stopped to adjust my goggles. The strap had been digging into the back of my head, and I needed to loosen it. I killed my engine and sat there for a minute, enjoying the silence. And it was at that moment I felt something. The ground was vibrating. I was like, is this just me? Maybe some residual buzz from the bike, my body still humming from the ride? But it wasn't. There was something beneath me, something in the ground itself. There was a low, rhythmic thrumming, vibrating my feet, going up my legs and into my chest. I looked around. The others were still riding, their headlights sweeping across the lake bed. They hadn't noticed anything. Then Danny killed his engine. He'd stopped maybe 50 yards away to take a leak, and I saw him freeze, saw him look down at the ground. "Hey," he shouted. "Do you guys feel that?" One by one, the others stopped. Tyler, then Keely, then Owen. The engines died, the headlights pointed in different directions, and in the sudden quiet, we could all feel it. Something was moving beneath us. What the heck is that? Owen asked, his voice higher than usual. Underground base, Tyler said. A military installation. They do tests out here all the time. That's not a test, Keeley said. That's something moving. She was right. It wasn't a constant vibration. There was a rhythm to it, like pulsing or footsteps, like something walking or crawling or burrowing. Maybe it's an earthquake, Danny offered. A little one, a tremor. Tremors don't move, I said. Everyone looked at me. I mean, it's moving, isn't it? Can you feel it getting closer? We all went quiet and listened with our bodies. And yeah, whatever was making that vibration, it was definitely getting closer. The pulses were coming faster and stronger, coming towards us from somewhere to the west. Get back on the bikes, Tyler said. Now. We listened. I'd never heard Tyler sound like that before. Not scared, but urgent, and he didn't have time for discussion. We started our engines and the sound drowned out the vibration. And for a second, I thought maybe we'd imagined the whole thing. But then, Keeley screamed. I whipped my head around and saw her pointing at something off to our left. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The ground was moving, but not like an earthquake. There was a ridge forming in the dirt, a raised line of displaced earth, and it was traveling across the lake bed like some sort of wave. It was fast, way too fast, and it was heading straight for Danny. Danny, move! Danny saw it then. His eyes went wide and he gunned his ATV, veering hard to the right. The ridge changed direction. It actually started to follow him. I watched, petrified, as Danny pushed his ATV as fast as it would go. But the ridge of earth closed the distance fast. 20 yards, 10 yards, 5. And then it stopped. Just stopped. That wave froze in place maybe 10 feet from Danny's ATV. The vibration ceased and everything went still. For about 3 seconds, nobody moved and nobody breathed. And then the ground collapsed. It didn't happen where Danny was. It happened where the ridge had stopped. A section of earth about 6 feet wide just fell in on itself, like a trap door opening, like there'd been nothing underneath it. Dirt and rocks tumbled into shadows, and I heard this sound, this wet, grinding sound, like something retreating. I saw it, just for a second, in the shadows of that hole, something pale, something that moved in a way that made my stomach twist up in these knots. It was pulling back, withdrawing into the earth. And then it was gone. What the heck? Danny whispered, then shouted, What the heck was that? We're leaving, Tyler said. We should go now. Everybody move. We turned our bikes toward where we'd left Tyler's truck and started to ride. Fast, dangerously. We'd made it maybe a quarter mile when Owen's ATV died. The thing just stopped. The engine cut out, and the lights went dark. We watched it coast to a halt. Owen was still on it, frantically trying to restart it, pressing the start button over and over. Owen, I screamed. Just leave it! Leave it there! He looked up at me, and then he looked down. The ground beneath his wheels was starting to vibrate. I'm not sure how he got off the ATV that fast. 1 second he was sitting there, the next he was running full speed toward Danny's ATV, with every gram of muscle in his body. Danny reached out and grabbed him by the arm, hauling him onto the back. And then we were all moving again. but behind us, I heard the ground open up. I looked back and saw Owen's ATV drop into the earth. It just disappeared, swallowed whole, the hole closing up behind it like some sort of mouth. And in the dust and the darkness, just for a second, I saw something pale rise up out of it, something with a lot of segments, something completely wrong. Then it was gone, pulled back into the ground, and we were racing across the lake bed with no idea where we were going. Just away. Out of there as fast as we could. Away from the thing that seemed to be hunting us. We rode blind for a long time. I don't mean that literally. We had our headlights, but we weren't navigating anymore. We were just fleeing, pointing our bikes away from where we'd been and opening the throttle, praying that whatever was beneath us could not keep up. It wasn't until Tyler finally slowed down and signaled for us to stop that I realized we had no idea where we were. The lake bed all looked the same, flat and featureless, the hills rising up in every direction, the sense of freedom gone, replaced by a sense of imprisonment. We'd come in from the southeast, parking the truck near a gap in the hills that Tyler had marked on his phone. But in the chaos of our escape, we'd gotten completely turned around. I couldn't tell which direction was which. The stars weren't helping. I'd never learned to navigate by the stars. And even if I had, I was too panicked to think clearly. "Where's the truck?" Danny asked. He was breathing hard, and Owen was still clinging to his back, arms wrapped around Danny's waist. "I don't know," Tyler said. "What do you mean you don't know?" "I mean I don't know, Danny. I was a little busy trying not to get swallowed by the freaking ground." Okay. Danny ran a hand through his hair. "Phones. Yeah, we check our phones. GPS." We all checked our pockets. I watched Danny's face fall as he pulled his out and tried to turn it on. "Of course it's dead," he said. "Forgot to charge it." Keely checked hers, pressed the button. Nothing. "Sorry. It was already at like 40% when we left, and I used it for the drive." Tyler's screen lit up. "Mine's good. 12%, but I've got no signal." Owen was the last to check. His hands were a trembling mess. He nearly dropped the phone twice. 34%, he said. "But no signal here either." "We need to get somewhere higher," Tyler said. "Those hills. We get up on those ridges, maybe we can get a bar, figure out where we are." Nobody had a better idea, so we started to move again, slower this time, heading toward the nearest hill. Our engine seemed impossibly loud now, and every few seconds my whole body would tense up as I mistook every new vibration as the ground possibly opening up beneath me. But it did vibrate, I think, twice during that ride. It was distant, far off to our left somewhere, and it wasn't coming any closer. Not yet. Whatever was down there, it seemed to be circling the edges of the lake bed. I'm not sure why. We made it to the base of the hill and killed our engines. The silence out there was nauseating. You could hear everything. The wind, insects, the sound of your breathing, and beneath it all, if you listened hard enough, there was the faint rhythmic pulse coming from somewhere underground. "We climb," Tyler said. "Leave the bikes here. They'll be fine." "And if they're not?" Danny asked. "Then we walk home." "Would you rather be on it when it gets swallowed?" Danny shook his head slowly. "Then come on." The climb was brutal. The hill wasn't that tall, maybe 100 up to 150 feet, but the terrain was all loose rock and brush, and we had to make the trip in the dark. Danny twisted his ankle about halfway up, stepping wrong on a rock that shifted under his weight. I could tell he thought it was the thing for a second, underground. He half screamed, but after Owen caught him mid-fall, he realized it was nothing. "I'm fine," Danny said through gritted teeth. "It's fine, just Keep going. Keely scraped her palms raw on a fall near the top, caught herself on a jagged piece of rock. I could see blood on her hands in the moonlight, dark and shiny. But she didn't complain, just wiped it on her jeans and kept climbing. We made it to the ridge around midnight. I remember checking my watch, an old digital Casio my dad had bought me, and I saw the numbers glow in the dark. 12:07 a.m. Below us, the lake bed stretched out like a pale scar in the moonlight. From here I could see our vehicles at the base of the hill, 3 motionless silhouettes clustered together. I could see the hole where Owen's ATV had gone down, a dark pit maybe 200 yards from where we'd originally stopped. And I could see the ground moving. But there were 3 now, 3 separate ridges crisscrossing the lake bed in long sweeping arcs. They moved like sharks circling a raft, never getting too close to each other, but never straying too far from our abandoned bikes. "Oh, Christ," Danny whispered. "There's more than one?" Owen said. His voice was barely audible. "There's more than one of them." Nobody responded. Tyler pulled out his phone after a while. The screen lit up his face, made him look pale and ghostly. "1 bar," he said. "Weak, but it's there." "Call your parents," Keely said. Tyler dialed. We all watched, holding our breath. He put the phone to his ear and waited. His expression didn't change. "Crap, voicemail," he said. He tried again. Same result. "They're asleep. Phones are probably in the kitchen. They do that." "Try mine," Owen said, and gave Tyler the number. Same thing. Voicemail. "Okay, our parents are in bed. That's normal. That's fine. Just call 911. Owen looked at me. "And what are we gonna say, man? There's a monster chasing us?" "Not necessarily. We tell them we're stranded. We tell them something is stalking us, a wild animal. They'll send someone. They have to. They're gonna think we're pranking them. You got a better idea?" Owen didn't. He took his phone from Tyler and stared at it. I think he was trying to figure out what to say without sounding crazy. Then he dialed. I couldn't hear the other end of the conversation, but I could hear Owen's side, and that was enough. "Hi, yes, I need help. We're stranded in the desert, outside of..." He looked at Tyler, who mouthed a location. He told them, then said, "We're on BLM land, a dry lake bed surrounded by a bunch of hills." A pause. "No, we're not injured. Not yet, but there's something out here, an animal. It's been stalking us." Another pause. Longer this time. "I don't know what kind. It's big. It moves underground like I don't know, like a really big snake. Maybe, but it's not a snake. It's been chasing us." I watched Owen's face as the dispatcher asked questions he couldn't answer. I could imagine. What does it look like? I don't know. How big is it? I don't know. Big enough to swallow an ATV. Is it venomous? How would I know that? "She's giving me advice," Owen said to us, covering the phone. "For predatory animals, make noise, make yourself look big, don't run." Danny rolled his eyes. "Does she have advice for something that hunts from underground? If not, maybe she's got a nice chili recipe we could try out." Owen didn't respond. He went back to the dispatcher. "We're on a ridge, a hill overlooking the lake bed. No, I don't know the exact coordinates. We drove about 40 minutes from... Yes, we'll stay on the line." He stayed on the line. We all sat there on the ridge, watching the things below circle our vehicles, listening to Owen murmur responses to questions that we couldn't hear. Questions that probably didn't matter. The dispatcher was trying to help. I'm sure she was doing everything by the book, but the book didn't have a chapter on this. They're sending someone," Owen said. "A unit to search the area. She says we should stay where we are. How long? Tyler asked. She doesn't know. They have to figure out where we are first. Yeah, she says if we stay on the line, she should be able to. His phone died mid-sentence. The screen just went dark, and that was it. Our last connection to the outside world. Gone. Owen stared at the dead phone in his hand. Then he slowly put it back in his pocket and didn't say anything. We sat on the ridge until almost 2 in the morning. We were all too tired, too scared to talk. We just watched the lake bed, watching those things circling, hoping to see headlights on the access road soon. A police cruiser, a search party, anything. But nothing came.
Subaru is proud to be the largest automotive donor to Meals on Wheels America, helping senior neighbors in need through the Share the Love event.
Get 0% APR.
Around 1:30, the ridges in the earth stopped moving. One by one, they went still, sinking back into the ground. The lake bed looked normal again, just flat, empty dirt under the stars. Maybe they left, Danny said. Maybe they're sleeping, Keeley said. Do they sleep? Nobody knew. Tyler stood up. He'd been sitting on a rock staring out at the desert, and something in his posture looked different. He looked like he'd made up his mind about something. We can't stay here, he said. We've got no water, no way to call for help anymore, and no guarantee the cops are even going to find us. We've got to start moving. Where? I asked. There's a tree line north of here. I saw it on the drive in, a stretch of woods, maybe a creek feeding it. And beyond the trees, there's a town. I saw the lights. How far? 3 miles, maybe a little more. 3 miles across open desert, with those things somewhere beneath us. We'll never make it, Owen said. We might not make it if we stay here either. Tyler looked at each of us in turn. I'm not saying it's a good plan. I'm saying it's the only plan we've got. We move fast, we stay together, and we hope whatever's down there is sleeping or hunting something else. Danny laughed then. It wasn't a funny laugh, more like the sound you make when you've run out of other options. All right, he said. Let's go get eaten in the woods instead of the desert. At least there'll be shade. We climbed down the far side of the hill, away from the lake bed. The ground here was even harder, and hopefully that might make a difference. I didn't know if that mattered, though. Didn't know anything about those creatures or what they could swim through. But it made me feel slightly better, putting my feet on what felt like solid rock. We walked single file. Tyler in front, then Keeley, then Danny limping on his bad ankle, then Owen, then me bringing up the rear. We moved as quietly as we could, placing our feet carefully, trying not to make vibrations. The first mile passed okay. The desert was eerily still. It was a windless night, so dang quiet. The moon had risen higher, casting everything in silver light. I could see the tree line ahead, so close yet so far. I was starting to think we might actually make it when Danny stepped on the wrong patch of ground. It looked the same as everything else, hard-packed dirt and rocks scattered across it. But when Danny put his weight on it, his legs sank to the knee. Soft earth, hidden beneath a thin crust like ice over a pond. Crap, Danny said, and the ground started to vibrate. Run! I'm not sure who shouted it. Maybe Tyler, could have been me even, but it didn't matter, because we all ran. I've never moved like that in my life. My legs were pumping like an Olympic runner, but my lungs could barely keep up. They were on fire in moments, and I could feel the earth trembling beneath my feet with every step. The vibration was getting stronger, getting closer. And I knew without looking, that something was coming behind us. Keely fell then. I saw her go down maybe 20 feet ahead of me. Her foot had caught on a rock, her body hitting the ground hard. Tyler was there in an instant, grabbing her arm, hauling her back up. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but she didn't slow down. Owen tripped too. He went sprawling, and I grabbed the back of his shirt, pulling him forward, helping him to stay on his feet. I kept him moving. I could hear something behind us now, not just vibration, but movement. A mighty force pushing the earth aside, pushing up from below. I told myself over and over, don't look back, don't look back. I couldn't do it even if I wanted to. I knew that if I did, I would slow down, and if I slowed down, I'd die. The tree line was only 50 yards, 40, 30. Then the ground behind me erupted. I felt dirt hit my back, felt the spray of rocks and soil, and I heard a sound unlike anything I'd heard before. A moist, grinding roar that seemed to come from everywhere at once. 20 yards, 10. We hit the trees. I crashed through the underbrush, branches whipping my face and roots grabbing at my feet. I didn't stop though. I kept running, deeper into those woods, until my legs gave out and I collapsed against a tree trunk, gasping for air. The others were there too. Tyler and Keely holding on to each other. Danny on his hands and knees, dry heaving. Owen was flat on his back, staring up at the canopy, his chest heaving. Behind us, at the edge of the woods, the rumbling stopped. I turned and looked back. Through the trees, I could see the desert we'd just crossed. The moonlight showed churned earth, a trail of destruction maybe 10 feet wide leading right up to the tree line. But it stopped right there. Whatever had been chasing us, it hadn't followed us into the woods. It can't. Danny was trying to catch his breath. It can't come in here. The trees, the roots, it can't burrow through. We're safe, Keely said. She laughed a high and shaky laugh. Oh my God, we're safe. Tyler didn't utter a word. He was still staring at the edge of the woods, unreadable. Come on, he finally said. The town's north of here. We gotta keep moving. We got up. It took a lot of effort. My whole body felt like it had been wrung out like a wet towel, but we got up. We started walking north, picking our way through the trees. It was harder to navigate in here, the moonlight filtering through the canopy in patches. But it was also quieter, calmer. The air smelled like pine trees and soil, wet soil. And for the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe again. We'd been walking about 10 minutes when I heard something. Footsteps. It wasn't ours either. It was coming from something else, something heavy, crashing through the brush somewhere off to our left. I stopped. The others stopped too. What is that? Owen whispered. We listened. The footsteps were slow and uneven, not that steady gait of a walking animal, but like something stumbling along, something that wasn't used to moving that way. Maybe it's a deer, Danny said, or a bear. Do they have bears out here? That's no bear, Tyler said. The footsteps were getting closer, moving parallel to us, matching our pace. Whatever it was aware we were here. Then I saw it. Through a gap in the trees, just for a second. A glimpse, but it was enough. Grayish white, pale, the color of something that had never seen sunlight. It was hunched over, about 7 feet tall when it was upright, but it wasn't upright. It was struggling. Its limbs bent in ways that didn't look quite right, because they seemed to be designed for pushing, for burrowing, not for walking on the surface. Its body was segmented, kind of reminded me of a worm, but thicker, fatter, with limbs sprouting from the segments, 4 that I could see, maybe more. They ended in something like hands, but the fingers were too long and they curved inward like hooks. I didn't see its face. It then moved behind a tree and it was gone. "Oh God," Keely said. "Oh God, it came out of the ground. It can walk, it can follow us." I was about to say she was wrong, that it had to be something else, but I'd seen enough of it to know that would be a lie. The thing from the desert was now in the woods with us. At least one of them was, and there was nowhere left to run. We all stopped moving, and we waited. We stood there in the dark, 5 terrified teenagers frozen between the trees, listening to the sound of something heavy moving through the woods, only about 30 yards away. The footsteps had stopped, but I could hear other sounds now. Cracking branches, undergrowth rustling, and a wet huffing noise that might have been breathing. "What do we do?" Owen's voice was barely audible. Tyler didn't say anything at first. He watched unblinkingly in the direction where we'd seen the thing. I could see him clenching his jaw over and over, and his hands were clenched into fists. I'd known Tyler since we were 11 years old, and this was the most fear I'd ever seen on him. He was truly and deeply scared. "We keep moving," he finally said, "north toward the town. We move quiet, but we move fast, and we don't stop for anything." "It's between us and the town," Keely said. "Then we go around it." "And if there's more than one?" Tyler looked at her. In the dim light coming through the trees, I could see something pass between them, a silent communication that couples develop. "Then we deal with it when that happens," Tyler said. "But we can't stay here." He was right. Standing still was not an option. Whatever that thing was, it knew where we were. If we didn't move, it would eventually come to us. We started walking again, slower now, more careful. Tyler led us at an angle, veering east to put distance between us and where we'd seen the creature. The woods were thick here, lots of undergrowth, and every step seemed to make noise no matter how carefully we placed our feet. Danny was struggling. His twisted ankle had swollen up during our run from the desert, and now he could barely put weight on it. Owen and I took turns supporting him, one arm over our shoulders, helping him through the brush. It slowed us down, and I tried not to think about it too much. And the sounds, they followed us. Not constantly, there would be long stretches of silence where I'd start to hope we'd lost it. But then I'd hear it again, that heavy, uneven movement, somewhere off to our left, still parallel to our path. It was tracking us and keeping pace, and waiting for something. "Why isn't it attacking us?" Danny whispered, during one of our brief stops. Even though it was so cold out, he was sweating. "If it wanted to kill us, it could have done it by now." "Maybe it's not sure," Keely said. "Maybe it's never hunted above ground before. Maybe it doesn't know how." "Great. We're being stalked by a confused monster. That makes me feel so much better." "Shut up," Tyler said. "Both of you. Listen." We listened. The woods had gone quiet. The footsteps and rustling and breathing had all stopped. There was now only wind and the trees. No, there was a distant sound, something else. "Cars," Owen said. "I hear cars." He was right. Somewhere ahead of us, maybe half a mile, I could hear the hum of traffic on the road. And beyond that, if I squinted hard through the trees, I could see lights. Street lights, porch lights, the glow of a town. "We're close," Tyler said. "Come on, we're almost there." We pushed forward with renewed energy. Even Danny seemed to find some reserve of strength. hobbling faster, even though his ankle was in poor condition. The lights grew brighter through the trees. The sounds of cars grew louder. Civilization, safety. We were gonna make it. We never saw it coming.
When a child is in the hospital, family does whatever it takes to stay. At Ronald McDonald House, we give them a community of support, warm meals, and a place to rest. Because when a child is in the fight of their lives, family stays. And Ronald McDonald House stays with them.
The creature hit us from the right. 1 second we were walking. The next second, something massive crashed through the undergrowth and slammed into Tyler, sending him sprawling. Keeley screamed. Tyler hit the ground hard, rolling, and he came up swinging. But the thing was on top of him. I could see it now, really see it, and my brain couldn't process what it even was. It was truly pale, almost glowing in the dark kind of pale. Its skin was slick and glistening, like something that was never meant to see open air. The segments of its body pulsed and contracted as it moved, each one rippling independently, like the thing was made of dozens of smaller creatures fused together. Its limbs, I still counted 4, were nearly infinitely jointed, sickeningly flexing and bending. They ended in these thick, hooked appendages. It was obviously designed for digging, and for pulling things down into the dark. And its head, just a blunt mass at the front of its body, with a vertical split that opened and closed in a way that suggested a mouth. The slit was ringed with something that looked like teeth, but I don't think they were. They were moving like these rasping plates, like what you'd see on a lamprey, designed for grinding, for wearing away. That's what I saw in the half-second before Tyler kicked it in what I assumed was its head. From that angle, I didn't see its face. If it had one, that is. Only Tyler could see it. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about that. His boot connected with a wet thud against the creature's head, and the thing recoiled. I don't think it was hurt. It looked more surprised. It pulled back, limbs scrambling for purchase on the forest floor. Then Tyler was up and running before it could recover. Go, go, go! We ran. There was nothing else to do. Danny's ankle didn't matter anymore. The noise we made didn't matter either. We crashed through the woods like animals fleeing a forest fire. The creature came after us. I could hear its heavy, uneven gait, faster now, more confident. It was learning, adapting. Every second it spent above ground, it was getting better at moving through the environment. Then Owen went down. I saw him get his foot caught on something, and he pitched forward, arms pinwheeling. Then he was on the ground, and the creature was right there on top of him. I didn't think in that moment. I just acted. I grabbed a branch off the ground, some dead wood, maybe 3 feet long, and I swung it at the thing with everything I had. There was a thud. I felt the impact travel up my arms, and I felt the branch break and splinter. The creature made a sound, high-pitched, a sort of shriek, and it turned toward me. For one horrible second, I was face to face with it. That eyeless head, that grinding mouth, close enough that I could smell it. This rank mineral odor like wet clay and rotting meat. And now I was certain this thing just didn't have a face. Then Tyler was there, grabbing Owen, hauling him up. Danny was there too, throwing rocks, anything he could find. Keeley was screaming at me to run. And so I ran. We burst out of the tree line, and suddenly there was open ground ahead of us. A grassy slope leading down to a road, streetlights, houses, a gas station with its lights still on. The town. We'd made it to the town. I risked a look back. The creature was at the edge of the woods. It had stopped there, its body partially hidden by the trees, that eyeless head turning back and forth like it was sensing us or something else. Maybe the streetlights, or the sounds of cars and the presence of people. It didn't follow us into the open. I don't know why. Could have been the light or the hard pavement. Nothing to burrow into, nowhere to retreat. Maybe it just knew on some instinctual level that this was not its territory. Whatever the reason, it stayed at the tree line and watched us without eyes. Its mouth opened and closed repeatedly, grinding plates catching the distant light. Eventually it turned and disappeared back into the woods. We did not stop running until we reached the first building we could find. It was an apartment complex, 2 stories, maybe 20 units. One of those cheap stucco buildings you see all over Southern California. There was a light on in one of the ground floor units, and Tyler ran straight to the door, starting to pound on it. "Hello? Please, we need some help. Please open the door." For a terrible moment, I didn't think anyone would come. I thought maybe whoever lived there was going to ignore us, pretend they hadn't heard, and we'd be stuck out here in the open, with that thing still somewhere in the woods behind us, still unsure if it could follow us out. But then the door opened. A woman stood there in a bathrobe, maybe 45 or 50 years old. She had curlers in her hair and a cordless phone in her hand. She was looking at us like we were aliens who had just landed on her doorstep. Which in a way, I guess we were. "Please," Keely said. She was crying, tears cutting tracks through the dirt and blood on her face. "Please help us. Something's chasing us. We need to call the police." The woman looked at Keely, then at the rest of us. 5 filthy, bleeding, terrified teens standing on her welcome mat at 4 a.m. I'm not sure what she saw on our faces, but whatever it was enough. "Come on, get inside," she said. "All of you, right now." We went inside. Her name was Barbara. She had a husband who slept through the whole thing, snoring in the back bedroom, never even woke up, and a cat that hissed at us from under the couch. She set us down in her living room, brought water, and called 911 while we tried to stop shaking. I remember sitting on that couch, looking at Barbara's family photos on the wall, her normal furniture, her normal life, feeling like I'd stepped through a portal from another dimension. Just an hour ago, I'd been running for my life from some sort of real-life monster. Now I was sitting in some stranger's living room, drinking water from a glass with cartoon lemons on it, waiting for the police to arrive. The cops came about 20 minutes later. 2 of them, a man and a woman, both looking very tired and skeptical. They took our statements separately, asking us to describe what happened. I told them a version of the truth. We'd been night riding, I admitted that part, figured there was no point in lying about it, and something had chased us. An animal, some kind of predator. We'd gotten lost, ran through the woods, and ended up here. The female officer asked me what kind of animal. I said I didn't really know, but I did know it was big and fast. She wrote it down without comment. I could tell she didn't entirely believe my story, but I also could tell she wasn't going to push it. We were clearly traumatized, and it was clear something had happened. But the details didn't add up, and she knew it. They drove us home. All of us piled into the back of a patrol car, squeezed together like sardines, too exhausted to care about the discomfort. It was almost 6 a.m. by the time they dropped me off at my home. My parents were awake. They'd gotten a call from the police, and they were waiting on the porch when the cruiser pulled up. My mom hugged me so hard, I thought she might crack a rib. My dad just stood there looking at me. I'd seen that look before. Relief, and also plenty of anger mixed together. I told them the story I told the cops. An animal attack, we got lost, we made it to a town. And their reaction was similar. They didn't fully believe me. But also, they were too happy to have me home to press for more details. I slept for 14 hours straight, and they let me. The next day, a search was conducted. They found Tyler's truck right where we'd left it, at the gap in the hills near the lake bed. The dirt bikes were still there, and the ATVs were recovered except for Owen's, which was never found. The official report said it had probably fallen into a sinkhole, which was not uncommon in that area. The holes in the lake bed were documented. 3 of them, the report said. Subsidence events caused by underground erosion, possibly an old aquifer that had collapsed. A natural phenomenon, nothing unusual. No animal was found, no tracks even. No evidence from out of the ordinary. Case closed, I guess. Our friends and I, after a few months' break, continued our nighttime hijinks, but we never went back or anywhere near that lake bed. We went to new, different places. Places we knew were safe. But a few months after that, well, something happened. It wasn't as major as the story I just told you, but I feel I should mention it. I was driving home from work, a late night shift, nearly midnight. I was on a stretch of highway that cuts through empty desert. Nothing around for miles, just sand and the occasional cactus. But my car, it started to vibrate. And it wasn't from the engine or the tires or the road. The whole car was shaking slightly, like I was driving over a series of small bumps, but different, deeper down. However, the road I was on was smooth. I could see it in my headlights, flat, perfect asphalt. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. Behind me, about 100 yards back, the ground was moving, a ridge of displaced earth, traveling alongside the highway, keeping pace with my car. The trauma came back up. I floored it. I'm not sure how fast I went, 90 maybe, even 100, fast enough that the steering wheel was shaking in my hands. One wrong move would have sent me spinning off the road. The ridge kept pace for about 30 seconds, then it veered off, disappearing into the darkness. It was gone. I didn't slow down until I was back in the city, but I didn't stop trembling then. I parked in my driveway, sitting in my car with the engine off, just trying to steady my breathing. I kept this event to myself, because I didn't want to scare my friends. By then, the events of that night had become a distant enough memory that we could all almost claim it was just a shared nightmare. If I told them about this, it would make it real again. So I kept it private. Now, it's been 12 years, and I'll never forget about that lake bed. When I was a kid, I remember playing Lava Monster or Tremors, based on the movie with Kevin Bacon, where we would run and jump around on playground equipment or trees, and you could not touch the ground because the person who was it would get you. Now, I don't know about playing that game for real. I'm not too good at climbing anymore, or running for that matter. Good night. This has been Unexplained Encounters. I'm your host, Darkness Prevails. For more scary stories like this, check out my podcast, Tales from the Break Room, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. If you have a scary story to share, send it to me at darkstories.org. If you're listening on the podcast, this episode should release on Christmas Eve. In that case, Merry Christmas to you all. I hope you get everything you want, and you have a great, warm time. Till next time, everyone, stay safe out there, and stay creepy, because this world is a strange one.